Jordan Peterson needs to shut up. Hi, I'm Mark.
And I'm Scott. And this is Church is Lame, the podcast where we try to fix the church by talking about the stupid things churches do that break the entire body. Mark, what's going on with Jordan Peterson?
I mean, what hasn't gone on with Jordan Peterson? I mean, let's just say it. You know, I mean, except for an outstanding academic career, but you know,
yeah.
we won't trash talk him for that,
right?
Any more than I just did, I guess. So
right. Oops.
Yeah. So by way of CBN, I saw this headline pop up, and it's just it's talking about this video he put up on YouTube called "A Message to the Christian Churches."
Message in a bottle.
Yeah, right. You know, because when you think a person that can write just a broad message to Christianity, yeah, Jordan Peterson's the first name that I think of.
Top of my list.
Right. So, you know, what it really comes down to is like in this video, he does a lot of complaining about like the weaponization of guilt against young men, principally young men. He does try to couch this and say, you know, it's particularly young men, but what affects young men will eventually affect young women. Well, we won't talk about the inherent misogyny in that statement.
Right. I was just about to say, but please go on.
And he has these 3 points where this guilt is being, leveled against our young men today. And that is, people making them feel guilty about patriarchy, about the despoiling of our environment, and about making people feel guilty about having quote unquote male ambition. Not really sure what the heck that's about. And this is just the worst part of it for me. So he ends this video by saying, your churches, for God's sake, quit fighting for social justice, quit saving the bloody planet, attend to some souls. That's what you're supposed to do. That's your holy duty. Now do it before it's too late. The hour is nigh. So there's a few things in here we can talk about.
Yeah, there's several things in there. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, like I want to start with this concept of weaponizing guilt against the young men in our, particularly the young men in our society, as he claims. I've met plenty of young men who aren't racked with guilt.
Yeah, like if there were a single demographic of people who are generally not oppressed or made to feel oppressed, it's generally men, and more specifically white men in America.
Well, there's that, yes.
There's that, and so it's an interesting statement coming from a white man, right? So like it's not anything we haven't heard in the last, that's very popular lately. The oppression of Christians, the oppression of men. We just talked about it. The persecution of the church. Everybody's got a persecution complex lately, even though like they're nowhere even close to real persecution.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the white male Christian persecution complex. That was a hard thing to get out of my mouth.
Yeah, like telling men, oh, you win too much. That is not persecution. That's an observation. Mostly backed up by real statistical data.
But, we don't want to trouble people with actual, responsibility for looking at the data and understanding its actual significance,
Well, if people looked at the data, we wouldn't have a show, would we?
No, we wouldn't, I guess. That's a fine point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weaponized guilt. Well, first of all, let's just say that the church, if anything, are masters of guilt in general.
Well, that is very true.
Usually, it gets applied to tithing, and it gets applied to attendance, right? If you don't tithe, you're not a mature Christian. If you don't attend regularly, you're not a mature Christian. If you're not part of every small group we have, a home group, a Bible study group, a baking group, whatever, singles group, whatever group it is you're not a part of that you demographically fit into, not being part of it makes you a bad Christian. So the church is uniquely gifted at guilting people. It's just interesting that now the ones who do the guilting are now saying, oh, we feel guilty. It's like, what are you feeling guilty about? You're the ones guilting everybody. You feeling guilty about guilting? I don't know.
Well, and like this 3-pronged thing that he has, this like patriarchy, like, so you're admitting here that patriarchy exists and is real, and is something that people can be made to feel guilty about.
Right.
But without ever actually, like recognizing apparently that the whole point of bringing up patriarchy to young men is to try to convince them not to, become patriarchs.
Right.
Pretty straightforward thing. Feeling guilty about, despoiling the environment. It's like, well, yeah, you should feel bad about that sort of thing. Like, you shouldn't feel good that, human activity is, affecting the climate at just an overly abundant rate.
Right. And like, nobody talks about climate change in order to make people feel guilty. We talk about climate change so that we can have a conversation about solutions.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so anybody who goes to that guilt place has a worldview that puts themselves at the center of everything, when, as the church, Jesus needs to be the center. And so what we say in our theology is that our God is the God of everything. But in the way we live, we make it clear that God's not actually the God of anything.
Yeah. And I think what you said there is just perfect. It puts you at the center of everything. Because this last thing of saying, like, well, male ambition is the problem. It's like, well, he doesn't bother defining what exactly male ambition is. He's just like, it's virtue signaling. It's really all he's doing.
Right. I feel like it's a synonym for patriarchy.
It really kind of is. But, it's like, his complaint is that, male ambition is being blamed for, basically people using up natural resources and all sorts of other ills, right? Including patriarchy and despoiling the planet. It's like, well, that's an issue. Like, societies don't get along well without cooperation. So if you're like emphasizing competition, which is part of, like that, traditional male like attitude you're supposed to have, a society will not survive on that. A society survives on cooperation.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't have the numbers to prove this, but I feel like if we put together a list of the 100 richest people on the face of the earth, with the exception of the Queen, by and large, that list would be mostly men.
It would be. I saw that number actually somewhat recently, and I can't remember what it was.
Right, but
like, I want to say it was like 85% male.
Right. And so I know enough about Peterson to know that he spends a lot of time talking about equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome is how he would put it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so he would say that we focus too much on equality of outcome. You and I specifically, that you and I focus too much on equality of outcome because we, like in this particular case, we don't see many women rising to the highest levels. But the thing is it's not that you and I are focusing on equality of outcome. It's that garbage in equals garbage out. If you don't have equality of opportunity, you're never going to get anything even close to what is a more, let's not even call it equality. Let's just call it a natural outcome, right? So if you have true equality of opportunity, instead of 0.1% of women making it to the Fortune 500, maybe, I don't know, 10% might make it, And so, like, he's saying we're weaponizing guilt, but we're not. We're just kind of shining light on the things that never change. And one of the things that never change is men finding ways to keep women down.
Yeah. I think it's a pretty well understood rule that guilt, generally speaking, doesn't affect behavior in a positive way.
Yeah.
Like if I feel guilty about something, it really kind of just causes me to stagnate and stop doing anything. However, if I can be motivated to change a thing that is unjust, then that motivation is a good thing. It'll motivate me toward an action, not away from an action. And like he even says here, it's like, quit fighting for social justice. Like, you have not read your Old Testament. More to the point, you haven't read Isaiah at all.
Right.
Like, justice in the Old Testament includes, quote unquote, social justice. In fact, like, you can't really use the word social justice in the Bible because the word it uses for justice is bigger than that.
Right.
It is this, it is this equality, not like just equality of opportunity, but equalities to be able to seize opportunities. Like that's a big thing, so like all this social justice stuff that some people complain about, that is biblical justice. So don't tell us not to pursue it. Quit saving our bloody planet. Okay, that's a smart thing to say. Let's destroy the planet so we all die.
Yeah, I know.
Let's just extinct humanity on purpose because it's fun, because we need to be paying attention to souls. Like the material realities in which human beings live is completely unimportant. Like this is the kind of Christianity that really just enrages me because like humans are more than just souls. If Jesus was fully human and fully God, which we affirm and the church has affirmed since the beginning, then you have to acknowledge that humans are fully human.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
because
absolutely.
he became one of us. So if we're not God at all, then we are definitely fully human. So, our spiritual condition and our material conditions are inseparable things.
Yeah.
But it's just me, talking sense.
Yeah, you should stop that. Like, it really is going to get you nowhere. Like, if you want to get anywhere in life, you're just going to have to stop that.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'll stop talking sense and I'll talk some nonsense for you. So, in Nigeria, there's a presidential election coming up in 2023.
That can't be good.
Yeah, I've never heard anything really good about Nigeria. I don't really know. Just the African continent has numerous countries that are in turmoil. And I'm not really feeling good about Nigeria's chances to not be in turmoil.
Right.
But just some basic background is that Nigeria in the north is basically, Muslim dominated, and the south is basically Christian dominated in terms of, religious preferences. And it has been this kind of unwritten rule, I guess, where when you have somebody running for president, that they will name their vice president somebody of a different religion, or more to the point, if a Muslim is running for president, they will name a Christian as their vice presidential candidate, and vice versa.
Sure.
But somebody had the unmitigated gall to say, well, I'm Muslim and I'm going to appoint my vice president a Muslim. Now, this is not like a law. This has just been kind of a convention. People just observe this, like the whole thing with, American presidential candidates submitting, their tax returns, right? It's just a thing people have done.
Yeah.
But, oh my gosh, like this was called by Christians in Nigeria a declaration of war.
Right.
Like what?
Yeah. Well, so apparently the Nigerians have been watching Hamilton, and what is it about the rest of the world that only takes away the worst lessons from American politics?
I'd like to think some of them are seeing those worst examples and then avoiding them.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm going to be honest. I don't know enough about this to speak intelligently on it. It drives me nuts when Christians use hyperbole when the whole situation is a little bit hyperbolic, right? The idea of a Christian submajority in Nigeria is a little bit crazy, right? Because it only exists probably because of a once or present large white,
just a settler colonial influence.
Some sort of colonial influence, right? And if there wouldn't have been a colonial influence, the whole area would be Muslim, right? And so, like, it's the declaration of war thing sounds like somebody waving their arms, desperate for 15 minutes of fame, instead of anything that even should even raise an eyebrow, right? Like in 2023, it's kind of obscene that any political party would choose a running mate that's not of your political party. We haven't done that in this country for decades.
Yeah, and I think, like, for me, the thing that really jumps out is just like that language, that declaration of war, right? It's hyperbolic, but it's the kind of hyperbolic language that could incite the right kind of person to enact violence in self-defense.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And that's the thing, like when we have, scripture, and we've quoted this a billion times, right? It's like, love your neighbor as yourself, and hey, love your enemy. And
Right.
pray for those who persecute you. None of that's even happened. This is just somebody naming their vice presidential candidate like that. And this is how angry people are getting about it. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's just, no, Christians are called to be better than that. Like if Muslims are your enemy, then love them like they're not your enemy. Like that's just what Jesus says. I mean, what does he know, right?
Right. Yeah, I wish I knew more about the situation. I don't want to comment too deeply into this because I don't know. Maybe I don't know if there is there a legitimate chance that Christians are persecuted in Nigeria? Like I don't know. Look at let's Google that. Let's go to the Almighty Oracle.
Yeah.
Like, are Christians persecuted in Nigeria? And I feel like there's another article that we are ignoring, like a very recent story that's made headlines that might be pertinent to this conversation. Dozens of Christians kidnapped in northern Nigeria is a recent headline from today, as a matter of fact. Yeah, so just to say that I wish I knew more. I feel like there's a lot of stuff happening in Nigeria right now, and I don't know that there is or there isn't a real fear of Christian persecution. But on the face of it, I agree with you that that Christians making hay about something that is totally normal everywhere else in the world seems a bit nonsensical.
Yeah, it's pretty maddening to me.
Yeah.
So let's move on from that because I think we've kind of gotten what we can out of that horse.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, hey, not every headline is gonna be a major big story. We can't ask for a Brian Houston every week.
Right. Exactly right. Thank God we don't have a Brian Houston every week.
Oh, that would be so terrible. So now I'm gonna have some people are gonna be like you're un-American, you're anti-patriotic because there's this Christian headline. So these guys, just the Irwin brothers, they are making a story about this dude Adam Brown, who was a SEAL Team 6 commando, and he had apparently had some problems with drug addiction, overcame those, and then he became a SEAL. And that's okay, I mean that's there's nothing terribly bad about that, except for there's this part Christians really love to just exemplify soldiers for some reason. And, I don't want, if you are or have been in the military, I'm not trying to say that you're a trash human being, but what I'm trying to say is, Matthew 5:9, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. So focusing a story about a guy who, was part of a team that violated the national sovereignty of Pakistan and illegally assassinated a person in that country, i.e. Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden, in my opinion, didn't really deserve to be, left alone. But at the same time, it was an action that basically everybody else on the planet recognizes was an illegal act and should have been regarded as an act of war. That's what we did. So so these Christian filmmakers are saying, look at this great guy who is not a peacemaker. The Bible never says blessed are the war makers.
Yeah.
And we're just going to laud him for his participation in an internationally illegal act. It's that kind of gets me in a bad way.
Yeah. So let me, for full disclosure, I was a soldier in the Army from 1993 to 1997. Let me say this. Militaries are an imperfect solution to real problems, right? Protecting borders, right? More essentially, right? The problem is not that anybody has borders. The problem is when the country next to you doesn't respect your borders, right? And tries to invade you and tries to take over a sovereign country through massive violence, right? And so yes, it would be nice in the perfect world to just to use a Bible verse and say, blessed are the peacemakers, and just kind of allow those kind of regime changes things to happen. But that becomes unsustainable, right? No prosperity happens when you cannot have stability, right? So regime change after, just look at the Middle East, regime change after regime change. One terrorist group takes over another terrorist group. You know, there is no peace. There is no prosperity. There's no opportunity for anything of good to happen because the war just rages on in perpetuity, right? I hear what you're saying about making an idol out of this person, right? Like I don't think there's anything wrong. Like we love stories of people overcoming odds, right? They're timeless stories, and there's nothing wrong with telling those stories. The problem becomes when we elevate them to a position that they couldn't possibly sustain, right?
Right.
Nobody should be elevated to celebrities except for Jesus, right? That is who we elevate. But we don't want to elevate Jesus because we're too whatever. Fill in the blank.
Yeah.
We're too scared. We're too embarrassed. We're too shy. Whatever that blank is for you. Like, we don't want to talk about Jesus, so we will kind of do a rope-a-dope, and we'll use this person's story and kind of set this person up as, well, here's the ultimate example of Jesus in the flesh. And of course, he's just a human being like the rest of us. He puts his pants on one leg at a time. You know, he yells at people. Like you said, he's part of the SEAL team that illegally, murdered somebody. And so I don't think it's wisdom for the church to be raising up anybody except Jesus.
Right. You know, and you have plenty of people. I mean, like, there are, people out there who were, in the military, whichever branch, they were doctors, and then they left the military and became part of Doctors Without Borders. You have the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who has been mobilized many times to help with disaster relief efforts, to rebuild bridges, to clear out debris so infrastructure can work, so help needs to go where it goes. So it's like, there are so many examples of things that even if you dislike the military, these are the people that are doing good work that we can really look up to the work that they're doing. But like, again, like a commando, which is a person who is trained in the art of war to a high degree, seems just, it really rubs me the wrong way to hold this person up as an example. It's just like, we have better examples.
Yes, I think that's a great point. That if we are going to raise up people as examples, there are much more, not even better, there are more interesting stories to tell than this one. Like, oh, this man loves Jesus, and then, is a protected murderer or assassin, Like, I think if we're going to talk about the love of Jesus and how it manifests in people, there might be better stories to tell, for sure.
And just like, I mean, I guess, if people don't like what I'm saying, it's like, consider that, David was not allowed, King David in the Old Testament, right, was not allowed to build the temple that was allowed for his son to build because David was a quote unquote man of war.
Right.
So even though like the conquest was seen as a necessary thing in the Old Testament narrative, David's participation in that, like in that warring for keeping the land of Israel to itself is still like, isn't the highest honor you can get.
Right. Yeah.
But not to say that in the same way, David can still be respected as a great king of Israel. No, I'm not trashing Adam Brown for, his participation in the military, for his training, and for him going off and doing a mission that he was told to go do.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think this could possibly be one of the most difficult topics to wrap your head around in the Bible, is the use of violence. Let's say for the use of violence for governance, right? Because God has no problem using violence for governance. He wiped out all of humanity in a great flood. That is violence for governance. In a manner of speaking, right? Now, from my point of view, nobody should be listening to the story of Noah's flood literally, right? This is an object lesson. Like, and you may disagree with me, and I respect that. I know a lot of people do. That's just my view of it. Is I don't look around me and I can't break the laws of physics just to make this story come true, right?
Yeah,
Either you have to make enough solid matter water that it covers up the whole earth, or you need to subtract enough solid matter out of existence so that the existing water can cover everything that's left, right? And so all of that is kind of magical fairy dust nonsense to me. Whereas if you read the story of Noah's flood as an object lesson, it is utterly simple and beautiful in the truth that it teaches us about how much God loves his people, you know?
Yeah, and that's Like, this is too thick for this podcast, man.
Absolutely. So just to say, I was in the military, and I understand that there are bad people in this world who need dealing with. There are bad governments who need dealing with. There are bad militaries that need dealing with. And I don't particularly approve or disapprove of what happens at that level of complexity, right?
Mm-hmm.
But just to come back to the story and say, if we're going to tell stories about the love of Jesus and the greatness of God, let's do it with people who actually model their lives after Jesus. Let's do it about people who contend for the marginalized. Let's do it for the people who are healers. Let's do it for the people that are redeemers. Let's do it for the people who are relational connectors, you know? And I think those are stories that are beautiful and that proclaim the glory of God better than just yet another SEAL Team 6 movie. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I'll just cap off what you said with complete agreement. It's like Jesus is the thing we're supposed to, chase after. And, I think that's the example we need to be trying to set and follow. And I think our storytelling, it's like, taking those ideals and elevating them is important.
Christ is not just for Christmas. I keep saying it.
No, he's also for Hanukkah.
Nice.
Yeah, like I'm going to get called atheist for that one. I'm sure.
Right.
I'm sure.
Oh, Mark, you're such a bad Christian. Why would you mention that Jewish holiday, Mark?
I don't know. Maybe it's because Jesus was Jewish. Oh, no, the heresy.
Maybe. You're just making all sorts of people mad today.
Yeah. Well, if I can make white supremacists angry, I'm going to.
You're doing something right.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Well, so did we ever get any constructive comments on any of our stuff?
Lately, well, let me say this. Not every story, you just said this earlier, not every story is a great story.
No. So
we haven't said this in a while. We read all of your comments, but we don't respond to them all because some of you guys write books and more comments are getting really long-winded. So we're going to respond to a bunch of comments summarized, right?
Okay.
So some of our most viewed videos are of Pastor Greg Locke and the way he hates witches and the way he hates literacy and education and imagination and, burning books and all that stuff. And so we get a lot of pushback about that. And we don't mind pushback, right? No, it's all good for the algorithm.
Yeah.
Go ahead and push back.
But like, why is this the guy that we're getting pushback on? I mean, like, we're not getting all this pushback about Brian Houston or Dave Ramsey.
Yeah. What's interesting about Greg Locke, though, is that the pushback, regardless of how many people and regardless of how many different words they use, they basically all start sounding the same. So, point number one, Greg Locke is an awesome man of God. He's awesome. He cares so much. He's awesome. And so let me say this, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again. You can believe whatever you want, but if we live our lives in a way that doesn't match the way Jesus lived his life when he was here on earth, we are probably doing something wrong and missing the point. Right? And that's not to say that Jesus never had an angry
Mm-hmm.
word, but Jesus had other words as well as angry words. And he saved those angry words for the times when they were most needed. And they seem to be most needed when talking to other religious leaders and authorities, and not so much the everyday layman. right? And so the idea that this man who is perpetually angry, perpetually making enemies, perpetually putting people down and making people the other, right? The women that are at his church that he accused of being witches, so he could get rid of them instead of actually having to deal with them, right? These are not consistent traits that we see of Jesus. And because of that, I have a hard time putting him in the same category of men that we would normally, or women, that we would normally kind of put in this like great men and women of God. You know, Billy Graham, Mother Teresa, you know, and anybody that would easily go into that category. I just don't see him sharing those same attributes.
No, I mean, he certainly doesn't. And I think like the worst part of it, for at least this guy, right, is that, you know, so much of what he does, like this book burning nonsense, it's like this stuff that gets all this attention, like it's performative. It's performance art. You know, it's Christian themed performance art is what it is. It's not what we're actually called to do. You know, and it's just absurd to me that people really, really want to stick up for him. It's like, well, there are problems with this guy, and we are, you know, fully within our sane minds to look at what he does as a pastor and compare it to, you know, Jesus and what Scripture says pastors and leaders should be, you know, should be doing.
Yeah, and you bring it. So you give us a nice segue into the second point that everybody brings up. What gives you and I specifically the right to quote unquote judge this man? Well, first of all, let me say we don't judge him, right? I'm the judge of nobody. I have the ability to incarcerate or punish absolutely no one. I tell my kids to sit in timeout, and they kind of look at me and kind of go, "Really? That's the best you can do?" Because they can sit in timeout and like entertain themselves, you know, far longer than is feasible to put them in timeout for, you know. So like in practical terms, I have the right to bring judgment down on absolutely zero people in this world, you know. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about these things and make sure that we are here's another word for it, accountability, holding one another accountable for the way we behave in Christ's name.
Yeah, and I think that's like the biggest, you know, correction we can make to this is like, you know, we have the right to judge to an extent, right? You know, we don't have, we can't just sit there and say like, well, you know, Greg Locke isn't a real Christian. We can just say he's behaving like he's not a Christian, or he's behaving like a bad Christian. Like that's like to compare somebody's behavior against a standard, i.e. the canon of Scripture.
Yeah.
Like we're fully within our rights to do that, and we are required to do that. You know, it's like you look at, you know, and I'll apologize to anybody like for not having this reference on, like, you know, the address on hand. But you know, like when the Thessalonians, you know, Paul lauds them into it's either 1 Corinthians or 2 Corinthians, but I can't remember which one. You know, like he's like, the Thessalonians were great. Like I would preach to them, and then they'd go and look up everything I said to make sure it was real.
Yeah.
Like that's a heck of an example, right? You know, and so like that's all we're trying to do is look up to make sure that what this guy is saying is, you know, legit.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so the third predictable and consistent pushback that we get about Greg Locke is simply that witchcraft is real.
Yeah,
right.
Like,
and you and I have addressed this really well. So I'm going to take one of them, and I'm going to let you take the other one of them.
Okay.
So the one that I like to talk about is exorcisms, right? The next time you have the ability to participate in an exorcism, get in there really, really close when the person takes the spoon and rams it into the other person's stomach. If you look closely in his other hand, chances are really good he's going to have a balled up piece of cloth with red ink or ketchup or something on it to simulate blood. Like, you want to talk about performance art. Like, Greg Locke is like, you are so charitable using the word art. This is not performance art. This is the circus come to town, is what Greg Locke is. It's just the circus. And so, like, we know that these things aren't real because all it takes is just the slightest amount of observation to peek behind the veil and see all the machinery that goes on to the smoke and mirrors of it all, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Unbelievable. You know, and I know that you like to talk about the Harry Potter books.
Oh yeah, because like there is like I've come across this more than once over the course of my life, like this just real like Archie comics view of witchcraft. I mean, it's like there is a religion that people call Wicca, or you know maybe some people call it Wicca craft or witchcraft, you know, but usually they'll just call it Wicca, or perhaps some other, you know, nature type religion like that, right? And that's a religious practice, and they have religious rites. You know, they might do quote unquote spells. But you know, if you can show me, you know, a Wiccan who can summon fire from the sky
on command,
I'll give you all my money.
Yeah, absolutely, right.
And that's the thing. It's like it is not real. Like it's like, you know, like I said before about the Harry Potter thing. Like you have Christians complaining that the Harry Potter books written by a Christian are teaching children how to become witches. It's like, it's complete fantasy. Like that's the degree to which a lot of Christians understand witchcraft, is they understand it as a complete fantasy that they have somehow decided is how it really is. Like, sorry, brooms don't fly, you know, all the pointy hat and whatever. I mean, there are people with pointy hats, but they're not witches. Okay. They're, you know, they're racist.
It is literally in the fiction section of the bookstore.
Yeah.
Like everybody involved with this process, like is right up front with you. This is not real. Like this is just entertainment, you know, something to kind of get the synapses in your brain firing, you know, and get a little bit of that dopamine going. It has nothing to do with reality. All right.
Yeah.
And then of course, every single pushback after accusing us of being judgmental, then the pushback becomes judgmental. We're heretics. We're not real Christians. We're blind. We are witches ourselves. So we're hypocrites. And of course, like I'm the first person to admit I'm a hypocrite, right? I'm a sinner in every single way there is to be sinful, right? You know, the Bible, you know, goes on, you know, it tells us like, you know, if you've lusted after a woman in your own heart, you've committed adultery. You know, if even in my mind, I was like, oh, I want to beat that person up so much. You know, I've committed violence in my mind. It's no different than actually committing the violence from a certain perspective, right? So there is probably not a sin out there that I haven't committed in my heart or my mind, right? And so I'm not saying I'm not sinful. I'm just saying that if you're going to attack me, you need to come with something better than like generic kind of like, we're not real Christians, because I don't know what real Christians like really means. I, you know, other than saying, well, Christ was the real Christian, and then we're all just doing our best to follow in his footsteps, you know?
Yeah. And it's just like, the sadness of like that like one note response. Like you don't have a legitimate response if your only thing is to say, you know, it's an attack. First of all, I mean, it's not like an actual criticism. It's like, well, you're not real Christians or you're heretics. It's like, all right, back that up. That should be your conclusion. That should not be how you like, just tell me your conclusion without any like setup for it.
Yeah. And the funny part
is upsetting, like how simplistic the mind is. Like, no, actually engage us one-on-one. Like if you dare.
Right. The funny part to me is that for all the words they use, they're not saying the one thing they really in their heart of hearts want to say. And what they really want to say, but they don't want it to show up in print, is Mark and Scott, you two are going to hell. That's what they really, and I think there are one or two that actually said it, you know, but by and large, people stop short of just saying that, but that's really what they're thinking. And in my opinion, that's what they're hoping. Right.
Yeah. And
like this kind of us and them kind of thing. Like they're trying to make us part of, you know, us or them, whichever they, you know, and like, oh, we're good things happen for us and bad things are going to happen to you.
Yeah. I'm completely certain. Like if Rob Bell were here, they would accuse him of being a heretic and not a real Christian too.
Yeah. Well, lots of people have, unfortunately. Yeah. That's a good segue, my brother. That was pretty smooth.
Yeah. Well, you know, because like I know people have accused him of the same thing. Like it's an attack on him, and it's like show me how, like, you know, what he says is not in keeping with, you know, the historic faith of the church. Like on all points, not just one.
Yeah. He had a quote. And I don't remember if it was for a TV interview or for a print interview. Or maybe it was in one of his books where he's like, You know, here I am on stage with the Pope and the Dalai Lama, you know, just enjoying all the truth that's coming from everybody, you know, and I have a hard time finding fault with that.
Yeah, me too.
You know, so yeah, really, really do hope that we somehow come across his radar someday and we can get him on the show.
That would be amazing.
Absolutely.
So, you know, where can people reach us?
Well, clearly you can comment to us on YouTube and we'll see that. But anywhere that you can type into a search bar, put in Church is Lame, and you'll find us all over the web. Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. I swear, the reason we get so much on Greg Locke is because our shorts don't start with that whole, like, trying to fix the church by calling out the stupid things churches do that make the entire body broken. Because they don't hear that, they don't understand what the show's about, and so they see us as judgmental. So maybe we're partly to blame for that. I don't know. Leave it in the comment if you think we should do more to explain who we are on the shorter form videos. Would really appreciate that. But anywhere you can find us, Facebook, we're active, Twitter, like you said, YouTube, anywhere, you know, subscribe and hit the like button, help us with the algorithm. And if you need to get a hold of us right away, like we had a recent video where we actually, on the video, and a person emailed us and gave us permission to tell part of their story. By all means, send us an email at churcheslamepodcast@gmail.com.
And after you have emailed us and commented at us and hit like and subscribe and the bells and the whistles and the donkeys and whatever else is there.
Click, 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 click.
Go in peace and serve the Lord.